dollar at all-time high and low foreign reserves. Is Pakistan the next Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka just faced the worst economic crisis in its history. Crippled by shortage of foreign exchange, the country has not been able to pay for imports of even essential commodities such as fuel. In fact, the crisis had been building up for many years as the country piled up foreign debts to the tune of $51 billion.
A large part of the foreign loans was reportedly spent on huge non-productive infrastructure projects. Meanwhile, flawed economic policies made things worse. Sri Lanka's troubles have increased in view of diminishing forex reserves,
Huge piles of debt, devaluation of the currency,
corruption and political instability,
and rising inflation. Sounds familiar?
Pakistan is facing somewhat the same issues while it looks for a way out amid political instability and burgeoning economic crisis. According to information from Bloomberg, Pakistan is among the 10 nations which face the possibility of an economic collapse due to rising inflation, debt, and borrowing costs. Why is Pakistan facing an economic crisis?
The current situation in Pakistan is mainly due to a large number of policy decisions and the political unrest in the country. Several factors such as external debt, foreign exchange reserves, inflation, are responsible for the deepening economic crisis in Pakistan. Just like Sri Lanka, Pakistan faces an acute shortage of foreign exchange reserves.
High dependence on imports, for both food and fuel, have resulted in a humongous increase in the imports bill of the country due to rising fuel prices.
Pakistan's currency has nosedived just like the Sri Lankan rupee declined in March 2022.
By June 2021, Pakistan's external debt touched $86.4 billion.
The country's total external debt and liabilities increased to $128 billion by March 2022.
In the next 5 years, Pakistan will have to repay, on account of repayment and the markup amount owed by the public sector, a sum of $49.23 billion.
It is an extremely alarming situation, with no signs of any fundamental change in economic outlook.
Similarly, Sri Lanka is indebted to heavy loans and investments from China.
While Sri Lanka has defaulted on repayment and is already in a debt trap, Pakistan, with investments under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is a close second.
Major investments in both the South Asian countries are in infrastructure. Instead, they should be developing solid industrial base to pursue a sustainable export economy in order to avoid the balance of payments and the foreign reserves crisis reoccurrence. For Pakistan, the Sri Lanka comparison is unmistakable, both in over-dependence on China and its own handling of the economy.
We may not be in Sri Lanka's shoes yet, but are not very far off as there are some comparable symptoms. Negotiations with the IMF seem inconclusive, and friendly countries have yet to offer financial support, so things aren't going well. Default might not be imminent, but it's definitely on the way. State Bank of Pakistan warns against such comparisons, but what happened in Sri Lanka must serve as a timely warning. How can we save Pakistan from default?